This is Saturn Girl. Like this video and subscribe to my channel. Comment below because I want to know what you think and it helps me out with the algorithm. But anyway, I'm doing this video today because the sun is trine Pluto. In fact, this aspect is perfecting. I should have done this video a few days ago, but we're going to do a dive into what this aspect means both in transit for you and for us, but also in natal charts. So if you have this aspect in your natal chart, this video is for you, okay? So this is important. What does this mean for you, for us, for me? Let's dive in. So what's the sun mean in astrology? The sun is authority. The sun is justice, also judgment. The sun is leadership, ambition, sight and perception, intellect, and divination. Some ancient astrologers refer to it as the soul, but actual ancient astrologers called the first house the soul. So, Anyway, well, what does Pluto mean? In astrology, Pluto is will and power. He's also transformation. Now, what they really mean when they say transformation is life-shattering crisis. Because how do we transform? Being shattered, right? It's the Plutonian experience. Pluto is also control, wealth and hidden treasures, hoarding money. The word plutocracy comes from Pluto, and that's a government ruled by the wealthy. And manipulation is also a very Plutonian quality, isn't it? And now, the archetypal manipulation can be found back in the Hades and Persephone myth. We'll call them Pluto and Venus here, just for convenience sake. But, so Hades and Persephone. Persephone went down to the underworld with Hades or Pluto. Eventually, she fell in love with him too. She had to go back up to the surface because her mom Demeter was so upset that her daughter Persephone was gone that she had covered the world in perpetual winter. And people were not living. They were passing away from that. So Persephone says to Pluto, "Yo, homie, I love you. Okay, but my mom's up top doing this perpetual winter thing, and people are dying, right? So I need to go back up to the surface to sort of fix this stuff. Okay, I'll be right back. Don't worry, I still love you." Well, super insecure Pluto was like, "Okay, but just take these pomegranate seeds with you." And what did the pomegranate seeds do? They bound her to the underworld. And that's where we get the idea that Persephone spends about half the year in the underworld and about half the year up on the surface. You see? So anyway, well, what do trines mean in this context? You might remember that trines are a harmonious aspect. But really nothing is all that harmonious when it comes to Pluto, is it? Even when it's a nice aspect. Now, trines are about 120 degrees. In modern astrology, the orb or margin of error is about 7 degrees each way. Of course, those trines that are 3 degrees or less are especially potent. Now, trines are also in the nature of Jupiter, making them the best or most benefic aspect. I love finger quotes because I like using words and I like doing silly things and like looking like a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Sorry. So now what does this mean for us? Okay, what does this aspect mean for us? In general, we see things like vulgar displays of power, which is the name of a Pantera album from the 90s. But seriously though, we do see dictatorial aspirations, takeovers, whether it's corporate or political, overreaches of power, censorship, uncovering hidden things, typically valuable things. Hiding, hoarding, or stealing. Breaking records, of course. Deception. Even encryption, right? Encryption and coding are very Plutonian. Also, illness and metastasizing. So things getting bigger. Especially illnesses are not fun things. I'm also thinking of, cancer. And the other thing that we see with this is the revelation of abuse or revealing abuse. So let's take a look at what events happened the last time the sun was trine Pluto. Okay, so this is when when the sun was in very early Gemini and Pluto in very early Aquarius at the very end of May, around the 21st. Okay, so what happened, now this was this past year, around May 21st of 2023. So what happened around this time? Well, number one, Montana became the first U.S. state to ban TikTok. Of course, amidst these controversial claims that China was somehow collecting personal data through this video app, right? Whether or not you believe in it, it's sort of a controversial claim, Well, anyway, what else happened? The oldest, near complete copy of the Hebrew Bible, dated back to what? It was like between the 7th and the 9th century CE, was sold on Sotheby's for, for about, $38.1 million, right? $38.1 million. This Bible is known as the Codex Sassoon. Like I said, dated back to, the late 9th or early 10th century. Pardon me, correction. Late 9th or early 10th century. It's one of the highest prices ever paid for a book at an auction. So, smashing records and also discovering hidden things, right? So you see the Plutonian thing there. Now, what else happened? The Illinois State Attorney General revealed that there was abuse. 451 Catholic clergy found to have abused close to 2,000 children over the course of 70 years. Now, I have to be careful to censor my language here because I can't use certain words or else I'll get in trouble with YouTube. So you can imagine what kind of abuse these Catholic clergy were guilty of, or allegedly guilty of, or alleged accused. Gotta be careful with my words. I'm not a freaking lawyer, okay? Jeez Louise. Anyway, you can see here about revelations regarding, I don't even know if I could say that word. And again, with forcing and control. When you force people into things, it's very Plutonian. Because not only are you enforcing your will, you're denying theirs. Now, what else happened in Florida? This big censorship campaign to get rid of anything considered woke was extended. Extended to the U.S. Youth Poet Laureate Amanda Corman's poem, very famous poem that she read during, I believe it was the inauguration. It was added to the banned reading list. I mean, this is blatant censorship. That's very Plutonian. Trying to ban something of goodwill. Well, what else happened? Scientists sent a test message simulating an alien transmission from the ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter back to scientists on Earth. The whole thing was to see if they could decode an alien message. I guess they're trying to practice for when Contact becomes a thing. Do any of you remember the movie Contact? It's like my favorite movie. I love that movie. Because they say, You know, if we're all that there is in this whole universe, then it's really an incredible waste of space, isn't it? So, I mean, quite frankly, I don't care about aliens because they're not paying my rent and they're not putting food on the table. When they do start doing that, I'm all for the aliens. So, anyway. Well, let's move on here. What are some events that we see happening now that are correlating with this transit? Elephant in the room, Russell Brand. These are some big allegations. Alleged, you know which word I'm saying? The R word for SA, right? You know what SA is? I don't mean SA. I mean SA, right? It's a type of abuse that is disgusting. So anyway, these allegations came out as the sun approached the trine with Pluto. Not only that, but this asshole actually has his natal sun trine his natal Pluto. He has this fucking aspect in his natal chart. These allegations are bad. I mean, really bad. It's the R word. At least 4 people have come forward. I can't say the allegations. I can't repeat them without getting in fucking trouble with YouTube, right? So you can imagine what I'm trying to express here by dancing around several bushes. And I don't mean the Bush family. Anyway, so these are bad. Okay, and what is the sun trine Pluto, right? The sun reveals Pluto's hidden skeletons that he shoves away in the closet or that he buried in the desert. Well, also here, the Danny Masterson situation, for those of you who are familiar with that. Danny Masterson was a former cast member on That 70s Show. And it turns out he did awful things too regarding the R word and SA. And was actually convicted. So it's no longer alleged. It's convicted, right? Danny Masterson. So what happened here? Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis, his co-stars, defended him, talking about how good of a person he is, despite having been a convicted, well, you know the word. Okay. So, now what else happened? The Heritage Foundation and 50 other conservative think tanks released a 900-page document called Project 2025, where they detail how they're going to turn the United States into a right-wing authoritarian state immediately after the election of a Republican for president. This is some scary stuff. They want to make trans people illegal. I mean, that's me. I would become illegal. This is very scary stuff. Now, this is also representative of a Plutonian overreach of power or seizure of power, because this sounds very similar to what happened in Germany in the 1930s. And I don't think that's hyperbolic to say. You know, we also have a revelation here of very evil intentions and motives. So, in response to this and several other occurrences, the Canadian Foreign Affairs Minister, Melanie Joly, I hope I'm saying that correctly, she said they're preparing for the United States to actually become a right-wing authoritarian state, and that they're preparing for massive refugee crises, especially trans people and from the LGBT community at large. This is very scary. So, well, let's move on, because what does this mean in an individual's birth chart? Well, number one, we'll often see self-assurance or this powerful presence. It's often like these people can walk into a room And automatically other people are like, well, who the fuck is she? Who does she think she is? Why is she walking like that? Or if it's dudes like, who does he think he is? I'm better than him. You know, it's this instant discomfort that we invoke in people just from our sense of a powerful presence. It's not anything conscious, right? These people can often be secretive and cunningly ambitious, right? The cutthroat person on the way up the ladder. You'll see fame and fortune oftentimes too. You know, those are rarer instances, but we'll also see, because the son is often representative of the father, we'll see strict, absent, or very wealthy fathers. Now, we'll also see jealousy, right? And people who get very possessive over others. We'll see people imposing power. Or, on the other hand, exposing and standing up to power. One person who's a bit Plutonian and a hero of mine is Angela Davis. Someone who stood up to power. Anyway, well, we'll also see, what? Kink. Sexual deviance. Also, we'll also see sex addiction. Sometimes abuse. Pluto very frequently correlates with abusive circumstances. We'll see a life fraught with crises. A fascination with death quite often. People who are selfish or miserly, or who hoard their wealth, like Scrooge McDuck, right? We'll also see psychological issues or mental health issues like high highs and low lows, right? These feelings of grandeur and these feelings of depression, right? Soaring to these ecstatic heights and plunging to these unfathomable lows. People who don't like to compromise, who want to shove things through. So let's take a look at some of these famous people with Sun trine Pluto. Number one, like we mentioned, the elephant in the room is Russell Brand. So I just watched part of a documentary on him last night, which got me on this kick. And it's really, really hard to watch. People who knew him or who were close to him said he was very manipulative and abusive. That he had a terrible addiction to sexual activity. And that this led him to do all kinds of terrible things. One of his assistants mentioned that he was having 4 and 5 women coming out of his place a day. Now, these allegations are absolutely disgusting. And you can see the abusive and addictive tendencies. The tendency to force. Now, his dad apparently got him his first prostitute when he was 16 or something like that. He did get very big and very famous quite young, and eventually got away with whatever, basically whatever he wanted. Until now. He even, the way he's sort of like trying to deflect from these allegations is so gross. He's trying to call it a liberal conspiracy against him. Like, yeah, right, dude. When someone does that, it's like, oh gosh, they're guilty. You know, at least that's what I thought. I know these are allegations, but that's what I thought. Now, who else has this? Margot Robbie! BARBIE! I love her. She's also Harley Quinn, you know. One of my spirit animals, because I fancy myself a little like Harley Quinn. So anyway, well, she seems very self-assured, doesn't she? She played Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn is like the quintessential Plutonian female character. The queen of sexy violence and mental illness, right? And obsession. She's obsessed with Mr. J, the Joker. I mean, I think Harley Quinn got big because she was in the animated show when I was a kid, the animated Batman series. And she was obsessed with the Joker, who just treated her like garbage over and over and over again, you know? And she was in the Suicide Squad, right? You can imagine what I'm talking about. The film / organization called the Squad. Very Plutonian. Now, and you might remember in the Barbie movie, spoiler alert, she becomes fascinated with death as well. Becomes the beginning of her journey. Now, Margot Robbie, she's famously secretive about her private life. So that's very Plutonian, of course. A couple of things I was able to find out from her Wikipedia page was that her dad was, in fact, a rich sugar tycoon who left when she was quite young. She was about 5. And she barely ever saw him. So she's got this rich, absent father, right? Who's kind of a tycoon. So very Plutonian. Now, the other one I thought was quite interesting was Lindsay Lohan, someone else that I love. She became very famous at a young age, didn't she? She had loads of run-ins with the law also. Now, multiple DUIs, drug possession, reckless driving, and even assault. I mean, quite Plutonian, isn't she? Now, her dad, Michael Lohan, had his own issues with addiction and mental illness. So, and his alcoholism apparently influenced her quite a bit. So then she ended up eventually dating wealthy foreign financiers, a wealthy Russian gentleman, and then eventually settling with a man in Dubai who she married and had a child with. So we see Plutonian crises, we see addiction, we see wealth, and the grandeur. Because it's fucking Dubai. I mean, what else is she going to be doing than living in luxury and grandeur? Although Dubai is going to become like uninhabitable because of climate change in the near future. Well, who else did I take note of here? We've got Cillian Murphy. It's Cillian Murphy. I love him. He's so gorgeous. Oh my God, he's a beautiful person. And his birthday is May 25th, just a few days after mine. Oh my goodness. Cillian Murphy. You could tell I kind of like him. He's a May Gemini like me. Anyway, he was also a big troublemaker as a kid, getting suspended from school for acting out. But he was also very, very artistic, a very talented musician, apparently mastering the piano, the flute, the violin, and the guitar at a young age. Murphy even started a band with his brother, kind of a psychedelic rock band that was known for their long-ass guitar solos and wackadoodle lyrics. He eventually found his passion, though, in acting and theater, and eventually became an overwhelming success. I fell in love with him when he played a transgender woman in the 2005 film Breakfast on Pluto. So number one, he's a Plutonian guy with the sun trine Pluto, and in this breakout film called Breakfast on Pluto. This movie was so important in my life and my development. I knew I was trans, even though I didn't have a word for it. It's 6 years old. There was no representation. The only close thing we had was basically either horror or extreme jest. I think the only semi-positive thing I could think of was the movie Mixed Nuts, where Liev Schreiber played a trans woman and was just made fun of the whole time. So, so Cillian Murphy's portrayal took place in the 1970s during the Troubles in Ireland, during incredible violence. And Murphy played a transgender woman growing up amidst all this, merely looking for love and trying to survive, just being herself. The movie brings tears to my eyes. It had such a big impression and effect on me. And Cillian Murphy, too, became, he gained notoriety and fame eventually. He played in Batman Begins, he played the Scarecrow, but then playing the lead in Peaky Blinders, which is a very Plutonian role. And this role has sort of become very influential in culture. Even presidential candidate and governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, used part of this Peaky Blinders show in one of his stupid LGBTQ anti-queer ads. And Cillian Murphy was very quick to come out and denounce this. He's actually spoken up for trans and gay rights and even gay marriage. He's been a hardcore activist to abolish abortion restrictions in Ireland. He's been an incredible force for progress and for good in the world. And he's a beautiful Gemini. So you can see someone who's Plutonian in this way, who's standing up to power and revealing its abuses. So, anyway, a couple others that I'll just briefly mention are Ron Perlman, famous actor and badass, who very recently gained notoriety for calling Hollywood execs motherfuckers and threatening them over their handling of the Writers Guild and Actors Guild strikes. And then there's Christopher Walken, considered one of the greatest actors of all time and a famous weirdo. So anyway, you're talking about man all wrong, I tell you. You do it again, and I'll face with a soldering iron. What is another one? It's like you want me to say what, right? Like I don't get it. That's from Wayne's World 2. Or, I love the movie True Romance with Christopher Walken. It's so good. I mean, he's very briefly in it, but I got a fever, and the only cure is more cowbell. I don't do a very good Christopher Walken, obviously. Well, what's this mean in your life? Because you're sick of me doing bad impressions. Well, firstly, no means no. For those of us, all the way down to millennial age, none of us really learned the nature of consent. And this is a very Plutonian thing, because Pluto doesn't really pay attention to consent. So it's very important that we learn to practice this now as we're adults, but also with our children, giving them the option to say yes or no. No, I mean, they need to eat their vegetables and pick up their trash and put away their clothes. But they still need free choice. Otherwise, they learn bad behavior and to tolerate bad behavior. And of course, one of Russell Brand's survivors allegedly told him after the fact, no means no. I mean, I'm a survivor. I'll leave it at that. So, now, you also need to be careful imposing your desires onto other people. You're probably going to be mostly focused on your own agenda, which is perfectly natural, but you're going to need buy-in rather than forcing people, because guess what? Other people make shit happen for you. You're not a rock and you're not an island. Just like the Simon and Garfunkel song, right? If you know that song. So, on the other hand, people may try and impose their will or desires on you. Now, in that case, you need to stand up for yourself. But balance is key. No one will represent your interests for you but you. And you can't count on anyone else but you. But sometimes we need a little help from our friends. and we don't want to push them away. That's why I say balance is key. Because we need to stand up for ourselves and recognize crappy behavior. But we also need to recognize people who can be helpful. And who we can be helpful for. It's not... See, Pluto loves to take, doesn't he? He doesn't really like giving. Well, that's not true. That's not true. Because Pluto is also manipulative. And he can often give because he's paranoid. He wants to keep Persephone. He wants to keep Venus. He doesn't want to lose them. And what does that end up doing to Pluto oftentimes? He gets so anxious that he keeps giving to his own detriment, to the point where he is drained, right? So that's another thing we have to be careful of too. Giving beyond our means, because you can't give from an empty cup, can you? Well, anyway, so ooh, this is also important for you too. You could also feel more ambitious. So try and harness this energy in order to get things done before things get more difficult, right? Set yourself up to be more powerful later. Plan ahead. That Plutonian cunning strategy, right? Now, this is also a great time for job interviews or anything where you need to project confidence and will or power. Thank you for watching till the end. I hope this was useful for you. Remember to like, subscribe, and comment. Also share this because I need help, right? Like and subscribe. Like this video. Subscribe to my channel. Click the bell so you get notified. And then remember, I do the best readings. It's scientifically proven. They've done studies. So, I love you. You're beautiful. And have a phenomenal whatever it is that you're having.